let's address a question that came up in response to a previous video. The halacha seems to imply, let's say the halacha is found in Maseches Sanhedrin and is brought by Rambam in the Laws of Kings and Their Wars, that at least in Torah terms, during or after, in the wake of wars to conquer the Canaanites or to destroy the Amalekites, it is permissible, according to halacha, to take spoils from them. Now that's sort of surprising. First of all, for the Canaanites, that isn't so much surprising, because that's what just said. The verse in Deuteronomy seems to promise them conquering Canaan will result in the Israelites acquiring houses full of all sorts of goodies that they did not fill. Okay. What about the Amalekites? Wasn't Saul bidden to destroy everything, not even take anything as sacrifice to God? That is true. Saul was given such a commandment. However, the halacha forever doesn't seem to say such thing. We never have a statement like that in the Torah. There's no statement like that in Chazal. What about the fact that Saul was told specifically not to take spoils from the Amalekites? The answer, that must have been a one-time dispensation. That was part of the specific command that Samuel gave Saul. Why? We saw that Saul had already initiated the war with the Amalekites on his own. No, Samuel had to tell him, yeah, you have to finish the job. This is specifically a God-given commandment. By the way, Amalekites as opposed to Philistines, big difference between the two. Philistines, there's no commandment to wipe them out. Am Yisrael didn't try to do that. That was a territorial dispute. That was normal warfare. So the Amalekites, for whatever reason, Samuel told Saul that God did not want any spoils taken in this particular war. What about another example? If you say that it's the Amalekites who were the Canaanite king of Arad who attacked Am Yisrael, as mentioned in Parshas Chukas, and Am Yisrael took a vow to utterly destroy them, V'acharamti, and it says they called the place where they destroyed those people Chorma, a place of destruction. Once again, that's because the people took on a vow. What about Jericho? Conquering Jericho, there wasn't that Canaanite city. Yes, and God had specifically told them, this is the one place that has to be cherem. Everything has to be destroyed. It's as though a korban to God. And by the way, this is something that happens throughout Tanakh. It's mentioned a few times in Sefer Tehillim. This is an idea that's in the Mishnah. Someone taking a vow, or a group of people taking a solemn vow to God, not to enjoy something or to not touch something. By the way, that's a very Jewish way of behaving. We're going to see this when we go back into Hilchos Ma'aser Karbanos pretty soon. One-time vows are examples of how people take upon themselves extra commandments as a means of strengthening their emunah b'tachon, their trust and their belief in God, and it also earns them more zechut. So we have examples. Queen Helene, for example, in the Mishnah, took a solemn vow to dedicate to the temple because her son went off to war and she really cared for him. King David, we have examples. That's what Jonah's sailors did. And even in next week's Parsha, according to the annual cycle, that's what Jacob did when he had the vision of the ladder. Actually, we're going to read it in the afternoon. It says he made a vow to God. If God would protect him and bring him back, so he would build a place of worship for God where he had his dream. So if we find that Am Yisrael took upon ourselves a vow to destroy everything or not enjoy from the spoils from a particular battle or a particular war, that doesn't mean because they were commanded by God. It means that they took it upon themselves in order to strengthen themselves. And sometimes, by the way, the vow can just be not eating any food. Like we saw Saul took such a vow and imposed it also on his people when he had his first battle with the Philistines. So that's something we have to understand. Therefore, it's no surprise that eventually we find in Chronicles 18, the first book of Chronicles 18, King David is giving his instructions to his son Solomon about how to build a temple. And he tells him that he had acquired much spoils, all the wars that he had conducted, all the bad guys he had killed in the name of God and for the protection of Am Yisrael. That was considered a righteous cause. However, it's also apparently, as he says twice in that book, what disqualified him from building the temple. So he took all those spoils, it says, from the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Moabites, and from the Philistines and the Amalekites, and he dedicated all to the temple. So that's explicit right there that King David had no religious opposition to taking from the Amalekites and dedicating it to God, holding on to the spoils. And therefore, this teaches us that where we see that Samuel had told Saul, to destroy all the spoils, to not enjoy any of the spoils from destroying the Amalekites. That was a one-time order, but not something that actually lasts throughout history. And therefore, because so far no true prophet has arisen in this current war, it would be perfectly legitimate for many reasons for the Jewish people to take spoils and to also conquer land. That's a very important thing. We'll get into that in a second.